Right now, Len and I have been talking a lot about domestication because we're both experiencing some things in our evolution. So we like to have these chats, and you guys have seen me have chats with my other MKP brothers because I love the authentic conversation. Today, we're talking about domestication and sex. And this comes up because Len and I had a conversation, and we talked about the second energy center, and this, or sacral center. Some people call it chakra, and it's known for the sexuality and creativity of a person. And I was telling Len, based on that conversation, I'm on like a second energy center cleanse. So no porn or masturbation. I just said it. No porn or masturbation. And I was telling Len that when I went, like, I actually had the urge for masturbation and porn. I went to a porn and I was like, wow, this is freaking really, this doesn't even make sense. And it brought me back to what we're taught. In that second energy center is developed between the ages of 7 and 14, Len, right?
Yes.
So we were talking about when do we even get to develop this, right? Like, when does this get developed? So Len, if you can go back a little bit, if you could talk to what resonated with what you said before, talking to like how sex was initiated for men way back.
Yeah, where we just were. Well,
yeah.
So we were making a distinction between the world of domestication, which is the world that I believe we are living in, the programmed world that's been programmed over centuries, but particularly in the industrialized state. We have disconnected, the collective we. I've been disconnected, we as men have been disconnected, and women, from the natural order of things. That's the central symptom of domestication. You know, we're disconnected from that primal self. And I think this is what everyone is scrambling to reconnect to. And when we bring sexuality or sex into it, and you mentioned before we got on the call, we got on the call with everyone, you mentioned sensuality. And sensuality is our natural state of awareness, to be sensual with our natural world, that connection through sense. To be fully sensual is to be fully connected through my senses, the natural world. And yet there's such a disconnect there. And in the, in the perfect evolution, you said we're both evolving.
Yes.
Maybe you and I think we are in our conversation.
Hey, I'm good with that right now. I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
It's a legend in my mind, man.
Well, there is no evolution without revolution, so that's for sure. We know both, brother.
Wow, true.
Yeah, a young man, between 7 and 14. There's a natural energetic advancement of energy. That's just biological, and so one way we define that is a young boy, testosterone comes online. And with testosterone is power. And that slight upgrade in power very much is, brings about greater sexual urge. And so as boys, we start, masturbating, and many times never stop masturbating because of the taboo of the judgments on sex in a domesticated world. It's not understood. The shame around sex, I mean, the men and women, particularly the men that I've coached, and my own experience, over this lifetime of the moving through the programming of shame around releasing oneself through a sexual experience. This is why there's so much constriction and restriction. I mean, sex, relationship, in the adult world today is probably one of the most confusing areas of, I'd say, of human human experience, human function. And we were talking, Paul, about what we teach in school. We teach mechanics, protection. This is a penis, this is a vagina. Protect yourself because of the transmission of disease. No one's talking about the sacred nature, even for a young boy, of moving into this part of your body and being initiated by an older woman. What we were talking about was the certain civilizations of old, ancestors, where there was still a sacred container, an initiation and an understanding. Young men were initiated into their sexuality by an older woman, but it was all contained within the tribe, within the code of that civilization. Egyptians did this, Spartans did this. Every warrior tribe has some level of sexual initiation that our modern day world has forgotten or denies or just doesn't understand.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting because it's almost like when you say that, I almost get angry because we're regressing, because we learn the mechanics of our bodies, but we're not learning what that translates and integrates to. Like for a boy coming into that space where it's like, oh my goodness, like I have an erection. What do I do with this? I don't know. Okay, and like the general consensus is, all right, rub one out. How do I do that? Here's a magazine.
Yeah.
Well, that's for, I mean, I'm a little older. Now it's like, here's a video, here's the internet.
Yeah, here's Dr. Google.
Yeah.
Google it.
And the interesting thing is, like, now, especially with the culture, because there's not that sensual integration or initiation for a man or women, it's like actually, for women, it's like they have their cycle. So that's how they know they're going into womanhood. For men, what do we got? Right? And it's interesting because, like, even in our culture, it's resulting in there is a lack of intimacy. There's like, okay, let's have a conversation. Instead, it's just like swipe, or like, yo, there's a lot of options out there, or like, I'm gonna play around. There's like this, and it's like stick and move. And this is where the sensuality came in for me, because it's like, okay, what is it like to use our senses? Like, our biggest organ we have is our skin. But we're focused on this region, right, our pelvic area, but we have a whole whole organ. We're never taught to use that. Even I remember when David Data talked about breathing into the orgasm as a man. And I was like, is that even possible? And then, like, when I actually was able to achieve it, I was like, oh my gosh. It was like, I just like was tingling and floating all over. And we're not taught that. That's the crazy thing. And the thing that gets me, though, too, Lynn, is I just have this growing sense that now, especially for men that are older and aren't taught about the intimacies of relationships, sexual and sensual relationship, there's this thing that, like, okay, if my dick doesn't work, then something's wrong with me. All right, so now I got to go get this blue chip or this, like, or this aid to help me out. And the thing that's happening is, if men aren't prepared for that, they're just going to stroke out and die. Okay. So, it's like men don't understand, like, okay, my thing does not working today. Okay, cool. I got a big organ.
Right.
I'm going to hook it up.
Let me jumpstart it.
Let me find other ways. But we're never taught that, man. That's the thing. And that's the thing when I was talking about, when you were talking about domestication, I was like, wow, that is a domestication, because that type of perspective is keeping us in this box, in this container, locked up and not fully embracing everything that we are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that there are so many restrictions and taboos in the world we live in around sexuality, sensuality, just what you said about, just connecting breath to orgasm, connecting breath to, just connecting breath to the body. In my healing practice, I mean, as simple as that sounds, individuals, that's where we start. People are just disconnected from breath, let alone bringing that breath into the experience of intimacy and union with a woman or between two people. And no, we're not taught it. And because we're not taught it, the levels of consciousness and energetic exchange as well as evolution, they just don't happen externally, certainly through this function, sexual function. And there is the backlog of that is the cause of most all disease. The backlog of these energies in the body. Look at prostate cancer. Everything's going to be related to some level of toxicity, but if you include the range of toxic thinking around my sexuality as a man, around a man's sexuality, and what's available, what's not available. I mean, we can open up a whole dialogue here that relates to almost every area of human function and human dysfunction in some way, shape, or form. I remember I remember when the good old president was caught in the Oval Office having a good release, a number of them with that young the young assistant, White House assistant. And I remember one of the wisest comments I heard was from a comedian. I'm not sure, I don't remember which one, but it was it was a satirical comedian. And he said, well, I'd rather him do that than push a button for a nuclear war.
Wow.
What he bridged was...
Wow. So much in that comment, Len. So much in that comment.
You know, it's when that Kundalini energy doesn't reach the brain. You know, and I mean, research now, a lot of Robert Moore and Doug Gillette's books, if you read the individual editions of Warrior, King, Magician, Lover, where they talk about the integration of archetypical energy. If a man's not integrating the archetypes in his sexual function, in his body, then so much of creative potential just goes undone. It never happens. And that's the process of that energy ascending up to the brain. And like the warrior, like I teach and you know, in the work we've done with a lot of the, you know, we touch a little bit on this on the bridge, you know, when a brother says, and when a brother who's been in and through initiation has an appreciation for what I'm going to say, but a man who's not been initiated into his own warrior, touched his own rage and made peace with that and can integrate that, that energy dispels what we know in a domesticated world as anxiety. When my warrior energy ascends to the brain, then my frontal lobe is activated and ignited. So much of problems of ADD, anxiety, fear, that frozen response at all levels of the primitive brain and the other brain. So in tantric sex, what has been known in generations past is that we initiate energy through sexuality. We're initiating the energetic body through our sexuality. And because of such a lack of understanding of that, there's so much frustration, so much restriction, so much dysfunction in men's bodies that are, you know, and women's as well in our culture, you know. So where do we even have a container to talk about these things?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we do in MKP, we do in our, but even that, there's always another level to go to.
Always, man. Especially with this, because I feel like it's a practice. Like, and what I mean by that is just connecting to a different space within that context or within the topic of sex, right? Just being able to take it from sexuality to sensuality. And it's something like I was talking to the warrior brother, Joe Bernstein, about this. We had a conversation around the second energy center. I was talking about this too. There's the sensuality. It takes practice because it's like really using all of the senses in the experience. And, you know, there's in my judgment, you know, speak for myself, like, you know, there's almost a conditioning like, nah, okay, it's got to be like this. And no, that's the beautiful thing about sensuality. It's like, it can go anywhere because the sensuality is you're present.
Mm-hmm.
And to give an example for people that are watching this, it's like when now that springtime is coming, you're going to see flowers and you're going to appreciate freaking everything because you're used to winter. At what point does that fade? Right? And really, it shouldn't, because in each moment, that flower is going to have a different fragrance. It may have a different shade. Something else is coming out. What are you noticing? What's happening? What's the feel of it? There's always something that's happening in the present, and that's the practice. That's the practice. And I don't feel like, you know, most people may not want to do that, but I feel like that's an experience, especially as, you know, for men, as we get older, you know, I think it's critical for us to have this. So especially if we have sons, we can teach them about this. Switch this whole thing up, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's the practice, I learned and have been taught by some of my mentors years ago. Mm-hmm. It's the practice within sacred function, within the temple of sacred humanity, the sacred way, the wholesome way. It's so, like you mentioned, you talk about sensuality, sexuality, sex,
right,
sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, emotional, energetic, intellectual intimacy, the experience of union with,
right,
being intimate. That's all one experience. And if men or women are trying to have sex without sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, there's a whole range that just never gets experienced or opened. And when we bring that in, the whole relationship begins to evolve. I don't know if you've ever had an energetic orgasm. It's not a physical release, right, but it's an energetic release. Yes. Those are revelations. We call those revelations. Mm-hmm. But in today's world, those revelations are minor revelations. They're like little strokes of the psyche, rather than revelation of the mind opening up to the spring and summer of possibility and creation. And in a domesticated world, everything is restricted through a lens of domestication. Even to begin to dialogue about this, let alone teach it and practice this level of human function, it's very unusual. It's very. I appreciate we're having this dialogue. We didn't get on the call with any particular agenda. Yeah. But there's so much relationship to what we're talking about in men's health. Mm-hmm. Man's health.
Speak on
man's vitality.
Right, gotcha.
Then it translates to, we were talking about metaphor, the body as a metaphor. Right. Prostate issues are not just about toxicity. They are a lot about environmental toxicity, but the energy that holds that in the body is the energy, the stagnation of Kundalini energy, the stagnation of that primal force. The primal force has the ability to heal and transmute. So why aren't we teaching our young men about primal energy? Because it's not part of any human agenda right now. In the established domesticated way. Sacred function for a young man or woman is not part of the human agenda. The closest we get to it in a domesticated world is we think it's religion, but religion is not what we're talking about. Right. There's more taboos in religions. So it's lost knowledge, it's lost mystery, and it's lost science, and yet it's coming back. I mean, that's part of at 2019. If you look at what's opening up at the beginning of the 21st century, where we are, right?
Right.
it's information that's been ancient that's trying to seep through, crack open the restriction of human consciousness. And this is where people are exploring. You know, as you were talking, I thought of, you know, the younger men that I coach or mentor, you know, in that millennial generation, they have less taboos around sexuality, less taboos than, say, my generation. You know, I mean, right. But still, they don't know, they don't have any more training. There's just less, there's kind of less feeling about it. There's less restriction, but there's no more training as to what the hell do I do? You know? So all the more motivation why we do the bridge, why the bridge is important, to bridge the right now it's not the profane world, the domesticated world, and then the sacred world. We're all mixed in there together. You know, it's all sacred.
Multiple realms.
And it's all, you know, and it's all profane. Can you who distinguishes one or the other? You know, that comes through initiation, where I can make different choices and say, oh, all right, everything looks different then. So if I masturbate, I do it because I honor my body. I do it in a sacred context. If I don't masturbate and I hold it, I do it because there's reason. If you know, everything we do then becomes the imperative is to build power. Right. We build power. That's what relationships are for. Relationships, the highest form of relationship, I believe, is co-creation. Not just procreation, it's co-creation to build creative power to support the world to evolve. And where do you know, that level of relationship, where do you find that? I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. And so today, I think the paradigm of relationship has fraction. It doesn't hold true anymore. But there's no clear paradigm or structure of what relationship should look like today. It's not based in security anymore. Right. Resonance, you know, sexual resonance, sensual resonance, intellectual, and, you know, emotional, energetic.
It's not the same.
Same.
It's not the same, man.
No.
And that's the thing. It's like it's not the same, and there's no foundation to build from. Like there's always got to be a foundation. If the foundation is cracked, like, okay, we can build something, it's gonna fall down anyway. Yep. Foundation is solid. We could build any kind of perception of relationship, emotional, intellectual, that we care to, because we have a foundation on how to take care of ourselves, what that looks like, and all these different things. How we interact with others, our essential. It's mind-blowing. So I'm glad we had this. I'm glad we started talking about this. I feel like when we get on a call, man, you never know what's gonna happen. We may just like freaking start recording, and that's basically what happened today. So for those that watched and we're gonna continue our conversation, but we want to get a little bit of that because we feel like that's a conversation that's not being had, and it gets to be had because it's for our development. Len, you got a piece?
I appreciate our dialogue, Paul. We kind of just spontaneously started this a month or so ago. Yeah. And, you know, the framework is the bridge. That's what brought us together. Yeah. And, you know, the bridge is that bridge between the profane and the sacred. And it's very personal, and it's still very collective.
It's something every man should experience. Every man can experience. And I feel like any man will get something from the bridge.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even our brothers who have gone through the New Warrior training in the community, there's always another level. And, you know, in my experience, it's easy to stop on that bridge of crossing over and think that I'm on the other side. There's always some area that is inviting me to cross a threshold. That's evolution. There's always something in my life that's asking me, will you go further?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Will you? It's that gut. I'm telling you. Man, I know we're gonna wrap up, but this is the piece here. Like that stagnation you were talking about with the Kundalini energy. I was watching something about that on Gaia and was talking about the Kundalini energy is meant to rise up the Sushumna, man, this central channel of energy right at the center of the body, right up the spine. It's physically there. But when we're not activating that and honing and harnessing that energy in the second energy center, we just kind of shut off most of it. It's like we create this small pinhole for energy to get through. We like constrict it, and then we don't supply our solar plexus, our gut, our heart to be able to care and have care for self and others. Whole thing, man. We could go on and on this.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen,
Nothing. I just appreciate the connection. You just open up a whole nother realm of discussion when you talk about health issues and the disconnect from Kundalini energy in our culture.
Oh man, you know what, Len? We're gonna have to give them that next time because you know what, they got a lot right here. We gotta let them digest this. Like, no. All right, so listen, we're stopping this. Thanks for watching. We'll follow up with there'll be some contact information on how to get in contact with Len, how to get in contact with me. Love these impromptu conversations, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, love you, brother. Stay well.
You too.